Manhattan Stardust, Chapter 11. Timing. Strictly speaking, I'm not, and never was, a numbers theorist. But being a numbers guy, I theorized that the numbers written by Jessica beneath her signature on the fresh copy of Super Duper Symmetry she gave me had something to do with her cell phone. That the numbers were underlined several times, I also theorized, meant that she probably wanted me to call her to let her know what I thought about the tome, which weighed in at 1.5 tons and took a while to wade through. It was merely the gracious and polite thing to do. So I did, and so she said, "Why don't we discuss it over dinner?" Now, a lot of parallel, if not symmetrical, alarm bells went off, because the last time I dined with the Jessica, I'd found myself in a pretty dark, albeit delicious, wood that had nearly had me exiled from Shangri-La in perpetuity. This time, I was determined to do the right thing, to be upfront, to come clean and not to conceal or fudge the truth one iota. And to tell you the truth, too, it took a lot of guts, I thought. So I told the new Jessica over a fairly tasty braised salmon garnished with truffle oil at her loft apartment on 9th Avenue that I was an accountant, pure and simple, but an accountant who took an interest in cosmology, astronomy, astrophysics, and symmetry. "What a relief," Jessica exclaimed. "You don't know what it's like to be surrounded by idiot savants. And what I need more than anything right now is somebody who can figure out my taxes. Does that happen to lie within your area of expertise?" she asked, refilling my glass of champagne. "Because if it does," she continued before I had a chance to respond, "I could really use the help." Her green eyes twinkled, and I noticed that aside from her long silken red hair, she had dimples that dimpled when she smiled, as she was doing right at the moment when I said I thought I could lend a hand, which she took in hers with the light touch I remembered feeling on my shoulder at the seminar a few weeks before, and brought to her cheek. I was as good as my word, and once or twice a week, owing to the volume of royalties and stipends and honoraria that flooded in, I cleaned up her tax situation with my number twos, and she thanked me effusively, and I thanked her back, and the combination of long lunches and early departures from work made it fit pretty seamlessly into the schedule, all this thanking to and fro. And when she told me I had a naturally adventurous intuition about the great problems of cosmology, I thought it was nice to be appreciated for qualities mostly overlooked by just about everybody else I knew or who knew me. True, there was a certain wholesome symmetry to Shangri-La, what with the four of us. But if symmetry was, as Jessica explained it, change without change, the supersymmetry I had begun to experience was change that never stayed the same, which I intuitively grasped, of course, and was very willing to devote many additional hours of study to under the tutelage of Jessica. After all, this was a hefty topic, and as the weeks wore on, it was a topic that became more and more fascinating. Jessica had explained to me that the universe didn't just bang when it began, but it exploded and changed so rapidly that it violated all the rules of physics that we've come to know. It allowed the universe to grow very, very big in a very short period of time. "We call it inflation," whispered Jessica. And that was something we both quite easily grasped. Back at Shangri-La, another kind of change was going on, but in a lower key. Jennifer was looking to pull out of banking and start up drama classes for kids, and Miranda jumped on that bandwagon, saying she'd always wanted to teach Suzuki, and even Helena started raving about getting real science into the early school years. And I suppose if you were a musician or an actor or a scientist, timing was a big deal, and maybe it was, or it wasn't. But I thought the timing for me to let them know about my new job offer was when I couldn't put it off any longer. and I was a little shocked by the reception, to be frank. "So let me get this straight," said Helena at our convocation. "Jessica, my boss, wants you to work for her?" "Yeah," I said truthfully. "And," added Jennifer, "you'll get what you're making with Bernie?" "More," I responded. "So you'll be like," said Miranda, "her personal accountant?" "Exactly. It'll be a chance for me to—" "Spread your wings," said Jennifer. "Yes, to spread my wings. Professionally speaking, that's exactly it. It'll be healthy. It's a career move." "That's an interesting way to put it," said Helena, with what I thought was an unhealthy focus on minutiae, worse than Doreen, in fact, an ex who accused me of wanting to murder my father simply because I said I wanted to kill him once. "What do you mean, interesting?" I asked. "You've been a little distracted lately," said Miranda, "when you're here." And that's when I stood up and said I wasn't going to take any innuendo, knowing full well that they didn't have a shred of real evidence to connect me with anything other than accounting, and stormed off. It's one thing to be accused of something when they've got the goods on you, but it's unacceptable, I feel, to be accused when they don't, and I wasn't going to play into these games, and I let them know. And in the next few weeks, my intuition took over, and I then began to grasp even more intuitively all that business about space-time, because I couldn't keep track of where I was or for how long whenever I ended up in Jessica's slender arms and wonderful legs. But still being an accountant and somebody who prided himself on doing the right thing the right way, I made the rounds. Naturally, I had to give Bernie notice, so I did. "If it's a raise you want, Gary, I can do that for you." "It's not about the money, Bernie." "Then what's it about?" "It's about my career." "Your career? You're going to leave a 5-star hotel for a houseboat?" "That's not how I'd put it." "What do the girls say? What's Miranda's take?" Bernie had a special fondness for Miranda ever since she and he smoked a Cuban cigar together while Jennifer was on sabbatical. "I don't think she grasped it, Bernie, at least not intuitively." "So who is he, your new boss?" "It's a she." "Get out of here, Gary. The sooner the better." Speaking of better, my father wasn't much either. "Wait a minute, son," and he used son only when he wasn't particularly happy with me. "You're going to work as a personal accountant for your ex-lover's boss," added Genevieve with a bit of a slant, I thought. "For the top cosmologist on the East Coast, Dad," I replied. "What's she look like? What's that have to do with anything? Just answer me." "No." "Get out of here," he replied, adding, "You bum." I thought I could depend upon Mom, who wasn't thrilled by the setup at Shangri-La in the first place, for a little less invective and prejudice and a sympathetic ear, but she overstepped the bounds even before I had a chance to explain the terms. "Gary, are you sleeping with this woman?" "Mom, how can you ask me something like that? I'm your son. And if you expect me to dignify this kind of question, you're worse than your father. Get out." Fortunately, I could count on Jasper. I got right down to the nub. "Jasp," I said, "you saw her. She's got legs like Miranda's, breasts like Jennifer, a brain that's brainier than Helena, and the most incredible, scintillating green eyes. And she's a redhead." Jasper beamed at me like the good old buddy he was, who knew a thing or two about duendes and the genuine, and who could be counted on to give it to me straight no matter how gay he was. "Gary," he said, "damn, that's what I call adventure. And you, of all people. It's about time. She's the real thing in spades, and you've got no business trying to run away from destiny. Go for it, buddy. Look at me. I'm stuck with this do-gooder Emilio who's become as exciting as a can of peas. Life is too short. How much time do you think you have? Here, let me give you a hug." And damn it, but I hugged the man back and didn't flinch. And if I'd had any doubts about doing the right thing, about the real thing, They were utterly dispelled by what happened to what remained of Shangri-La a month after I moved into Jessica's spacious loft. Jennifer was in the fast lane with a cocky young stockbroker. Miranda had shacked up with a bassoonist who wrote ghazals, and Helena was hitting on one of her mousy postdocs. That's what I call timing, and for me, a very narrow escape. That's what happens to plain old-fashioned symmetry, Gary, cooed Jessica. It always breaks down. Well, a few weeks later, I was getting an intuitive feel that supersymmetry and even super-duper symmetry weren't much different. Jessica traveled everywhere at least once a week, and unless I carried her bags in tax forms, I was left with empty space at her loft, space that wasn't filled with what she and Helena insisted wasn't empty, because it was. Jessica was often not on time when she returned, and I could deal with that because my pent-up intuition made our reunions all the more explosive. But no sooner had Vesuvius blown its top than Jessica was blowing out of town again. Luckily, her legs and eyes and long red hair worked wonders on me every time she returned, until the time she turned to me and said that sometimes random things occurred. But you knew that intuitively, didn't you, Gary? Oh, sure, yes, that's the uncertainty thing. Exactly, sweetheart. Sometimes things just happen. Yes, like us. That too, she replied, not brightly. It's one of the most fundamental laws, Gary. Meaning? Meaning unification is elusive, she concluded. Back at Jasper's, covered in cat hair, out of earshot of Emilio, who wasn't speaking or playing basketball with me, Jasper confided that he was sure glad he hadn't gotten too adventurous with the bike repairman who'd caught his eye. At first I thought he was my type, Gary, but it was just looks, and luckily I took a good look before I leapt. The man was irritating me, but I couldn't let him know because I was stuck. And I hear your whole damn utopian experiment has gone down the tubes. What a shame. You really had something going there for a while. Pretty amazing if you ask me, Jasper added. Then why didn't you do anything to stop me from making the leap with the real thing? Isn't that what you said, that she was the real thing? Hey, Gary, are you saying I'm responsible for the mess you made? Don't go there. I didn't, because I crumpled up the 50,000th attempt at a letter to each and all of the girls and threw, missing Jasper's face by an inch. Yeah, Jasper opined without missing a beat. Miranda's with a bassoonist. God, can you believe it? You think with her legs and musical skills she could do better. And Jennifer's hanging with the money changer, so much for her artistry. Helena, I can't say I ever got a grip on her, to be honest, but I hear she's back to man-hating. Not that I blame her. That's when fate came knocking one more time. Not to save me, but to save Jasper, whom I had leapt up to strangle. It was Sabrina ringing my cell. Hi, sis. Hi, little brother. It's me. I'm coming to the coast for a little visit. Don't worry, I'll be staying with Mom. She told me everything, by the way. Yeah. Keep your chin up. Okay. And Gary? Yeah? Before you do anything else, go and beg Bernie for your job back. It won't work. Trust me. I know his type, and I know about your skills. They need guys like you. That was a surprise. And though Bernie gave me the fisheye and refused to shake my hand, let alone slap my back, pinch my cheek, or grab my neck, I got a slot 3 levels below my former pay scale, but it was something. Mom was Mom again, and Sabrina was less a big sister than an overbearing but well-meaning friend. And she was especially inquisitive about what I knew about the girls and what, if anything, I wanted from them. I just wanted to have a powwow and apologize. Wow, exclaimed Mom. No, I said, a powwow. He's still got a sense of humor, remarked Sabrina. Sort of. Gary, nothing stays the same. Even empires rise and fall, said Mom. And rise again, added Sabrina cryptically. If that's what you want, let me see what I can do. And damn, but didn't she pull it off? Nearly 3 months to the day of my fateful departure, there I was back at the shell of Shangri-La, nervously sitting with the other 3 parts of the former quaternary system sitting apart from each other and from me. Sabrina, being the force of nature that she is, and she could be both irresistible and immovable simultaneously, brought the proceedings to order, surgically. Gary wants to say something to all of you, she said. Gary, you've got the floor. Which is exactly where I looked, because I couldn't bear to look at Jennifer, who smoldered, Miranda, who fumed, or Helena, who burned. I'm sorry. Is that it? Said Jennifer. I've got somebody waiting for me. So I hear, said Miranda. Mr. Social Conscience, or is it Mr. Pyramid Scheme? That's rich, replied Jennifer, coming from a so-called poet who's spending time with a so-called person who plays the bassoon when he's not writing glorified haikus. That's men for you, chimed in Helena. Always a disappointment. And what do you call yourself? Cried Miranda. A hope? Sabrina stared them down and quieted the group and turned to me. But I was out of words. Something seemed so strange it was downright queer. I was unhappy, and the girls were nearly as unhappy as I, and they just didn't look themselves somehow. Do I have to tell him? Asked Sabrina. Tell me what? I said. About change, she replied. I know all about it. You may know about change, Gary, but you're not so good on timing. In about 5 more months, there's going to be a whole lot of change coming. You mean when the lease is up? And that's when Sabrina became my good old big sister again and barked. You're so busy feeling sorry for yourself that you can't even see what's in front of you. Will you please look? So I did. First at Jennifer, then at Miranda, and then at Helena, very closely. And I couldn't believe the eyes I closed right before I hit the floor. Ithaca is pretty cold in winter, but we were managing. The old farmstead had lots of room, tax season was busy, and we were living mainly off the acreage. Thanks to Jennifer's well-invested stash, we had enough to keep us going for a few years on interest and frugality. There was local amateur theater, local amateur music, and local professional cosmology at Cornell. But more important were the 3 new additions who required lots of care. It was a whole new ball game at a whole new Shangri-La. Fortunately, Jennifer's parents didn't mind passing on the tips about child-rearing, which Emilio and Jasper couldn't get enough of when they came to take up residence on the commune. It wasn't Paris 1871, because in our Constitution there were just 3 rules. All for one for all, no TV. Someday I'll write about it, if I ever get a moment to myself again, and the other stuff that happened in between.